The Natufians are the Neolithic ancestors of the Sumerians and are credited with the discovery of beer. These pre-agricultural hunter-gatherers stored barley in jars and accidentally provided wild yeast a place to ferment. In the oldest temple in the world, Göbekli Tepe, they found fermentation vessels. This suggests that these nomadic people would congregate around these temples in order to ferment and drink beer together in these sort of religio-social festivals. It was the pursuit of this psychopharmacological substance that started the agricultural or Neolithic revolution, when humans began to settle and civilization started. The Fertile Crescent was perfect for the growing and domestication of cereal crops used for fermentation. All the research indicates that humans began to farm in order to ferment beer and not to bake bread. Early bread baking was used as an ingredient for the beer and not as a food source itself, unless in the case of famine. The beer of ancient Sumeria is a lot different from our modern commercially produced beer. Their beer was more like a porridge, and it contained many medicinal herbs and spices. They also didn't filter out the yeast, but they would eventually use straws. Their beer also solved all of their nutritional deficiencies that bread never would have. It was a legitimate food source and an actual meal, not an accompaniment. Beer making was one of the few professions a woman could actually occupy in ancient Sumeria, alongside with priestess and prostitute. It was actually a very well-respected profession, and women could even open up their own taverns. A famous Assyriologist said that the brewer's craft is the only profession in Mesopotamia which derives divine protection and social sanction from a goddess. In fact, from two female figures of the pantheon, Ninkasi and Ceres. The oldest recipe in the world that we have evidence for is found in the hymn of Ninkasi, who is the Sumerian goddess of beer. Beer was pervasive in all aspects of Sumerian society, including religion, which makes sense since civilization started in order to brew beer. The ancient Mesopotamians believed that humans were created to serve the gods, but that the gods provided beer to make their toil easier. Even without microscopes, they knew that there was some sort of magical property that allowed a fermentation to take place. Fermentation was a religious process. One had to perform rituals and sing hymns to the gods in order to collect the yeast from the heavens. In the Bible, leaven, or yeast, is compared to the kingdom of God. The Eucharistic sacrament and the Passover both use wine while using unleavened bread, or bread without yeast. The fermentation of the yeast fungus is the earliest microbiological process knowingly employed by man. It started human civilization as we know it and experienced a convergent evolution all across the world from the Americas to China. And finally was a religious process where the invisible spores were seen as spirits or gifts of the gods.